I spoke with Michael Callahan for a Vanishing Father series. Michael is actually my oldest brother and the first person I came to about this project. I wanted to know what it was like growing up without a sibling that shared the same biological father and mother as he did. How he dealt with his father's drug addiction, the loss of his father at a young age, and ultimately what changed his mind from never wanting to be a father to becoming a loving husband and father himself. This is Michael's story. All right, Michael, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me, Jamie.
I know this is a little bit different because, Michael, you're my brother. You're my oldest brother. So I am always interviewing so many people, but this is, I interviewed my husband. So I did interview Jerry once, but it's always a little bit different when you're interviewing a family member. So this should be
Try to
fun.
make it as awkward as possible.
Yeah, right. It should be a lot of fun.
I'll do my best.
Okay. So tell me a little bit, because I think this will be really interesting because we grew up in the same family, but we have different fathers. So it'll be interesting to see your outlook on different things, if it's similar or a lot different than mine. So let's start out first. Obviously, people are listening that, they don't know you. So tell me, when you were born and where, and tell me about your family dynamic when you're born.
Okay. I was born November 28th, 1979. I am the oldest of 6 kids. I am your older brother, and I was born in the Baltimore area. And I have a lot of good memories, but I've never been asked a lot of these questions, so I've been thinking about them. There is a lot of um, there's a lot of uniqueness to, I suppose, how I viewed my family when I was very young, and I have a lot of early memories of you and DJ, and yeah, I guess growing up with a different father, it didn't really register when I was young because I felt like I had a brother and sister, and I also always had a stepfather figure there
Mhm.
throughout. So one of the most interesting things about this topic is I've thought more deeply about the no father thing as I've gotten older. When I was younger, it was just kind of like I didn't know what I was missing.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit. Let's go back. And so your biological father and mom, were they together when you were born? And what was their dynamic as you were younger?
You had asked in pre about any memories of my father when I was young, and I don't. I have 3 distinct memories of my father, and none of them are from when I was a child or a baby. I was always told growing up that my father left at when I was 1 years old or when I was a year and a half or something like that. I have a child now, Michael Callahan the fourth, and when we were getting ready to have him, I went home to meet to hang out with mom, to see the family, and I believe Jessica was she was close. She was probably 6, 7 months pregnant, and then I really wanted to dig into it with mom, so I asked when my father left, and I got a little bit more of an accurate picture of just what that dynamic was. And he didn't stick around for long at all. The perception I got from mom when I asked that most recent time was that they were both very young. It was a young relationship, and he didn't stick around because he was simply immature. But it wasn't even a year and a half. I don't think he was around for more than a couple months.
Yeah.
Um,
Because she was
so
19, wasn't she?
she was 19, yeah.
Yeah. Was he 19 too?
I believe so. They're the same age. He was a little bit older, I think.
Okay.
Not quite a year.
Mm-hmm. And so then what was that like when you were younger? Did you see any difference? Because at that point, we went through where mom was married to my dad, me and DJ's for a little bit. But then do you remember any of the time when they were together? Because you were also pretty young too.
Yes, yes. When I do have uh, memories of Dave, which is your father, and I don't have memories thinking he was my dad, but I have pretty strong memories thinking he was a father figure and
Mm-hmm.
he was your dad, and I have positive memories of him But my youngest memories with a father figure was Dave being there and you guys being very, very small and him always being nice to me, but he, of course, spoiled the heck out of your brother.
Oh, yeah. What was that like? How did that feel?
Like I said, I think more contemplatively about the no father thing as I've gotten older. When I was young and looking at Dave as a father figure, I just remember thinking, well, I guess my dad's not here. I guess I guess I'll work that out later. I guess I'll figure that out later. Never really got a whole lot of later though.
And so then mom ended up divorcing Dave. And then what was that time like in between? Because then she met Jack and married him. But what was that like?
Yeah. The reason there's so much. I mean, you have to realize she married Jack when I was 6 years old.
Okay, so you were still really
So
young.
yeah, so a lot. The reason that the Dave and my father thing is so crazy is that first 5 years of my life was kind of wild. Like there was a lot of things going on, but I was also 1 to 5. So
So
when
little.
I started, I, 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 I always thought I had a traditionally kind of regular upbringing because at 6, she introduced Jack to the family and married Jack. And I do have a pretty, and I've told mom this, I have an interesting memory. I don't know exactly why I remember this, but I remember her taking me into the garage and explaining to me that I needed to start calling him dad. It was weird to me. It felt weird to me. And I guess that reinforces the Dave thing because I never thought of calling, I mean, maybe I did call him dad, but I always knew he was Dave. He was always just kind of like a cool stepdad. And I guess we were taking that route with Jack and mom was like, no, you're going to call him dad. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll call him dad. um, but then, for a lot of years, at least a decade, it's a pretty regular family waiting at the bottom of the stairs at Christmas, video cameraing, a kind of a normal upbringing. And then, when I was 20 years old, my father died. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Well, take it back a little bit to when was the first time that you met your father? How old were you and what was that like?
Okay. The first time I met my father, I was a teenager. There's 3 distinct memories I have of my father, which, there is a certain amount of sadness about that because, the first feeling I had when I heard that he had died, and I'll get back to your question, but
Sure.
the first feeling I had when he died was that kind of like that, you get the feeling like in your life you might forget about something and you're like, oh, I missed that. I'll never get a chance to do that again. It might have been like a vacation you were going to go on or something like that. I felt that, but like 100 times more inside. I was like, wow, I really just lost the chance to get to know that person. There's a missed opportunity there, to say the least. But the 3 memories I have of my father is when I was a young boy, maybe 6 to 8 years old, or I don't think I was 9. But my mom, my father's mother, who I did have a relationship with growing up, for the audience. That's my grandmother. She was at my wedding. We're still very close, but she is the person from my father's side who I have a relationship with. She put me on the phone against mom's wishes with my dad. And I talked to them for a few minutes. It was interesting. But that's my one memory. My second memory is the first time I got to meet him face to face, which was at an IHOP. It's actually a pretty interesting. It's a pretty. It's a pretty crazy story. I mean, it's kind of beautiful. It's kind of sad because he only said a few things to me, but when I first sat down to meet him at a counter, like we're at an IHOP, and he said, I looked at him, I was like, because I'd followed him to the seat, and I was like, studying this person physically, and I was like, he's got my wide frame. He like kind of looks like a square like me. uh and I sat down and I was like, you have my eyes. And he was like, no boy, you have mine. It was pretty cute. But that's my second memory. The third memory is he he went back and forth in and out of addiction. And when he wasn't struggling with addiction, I guess he was very involved in the church, and he had some sort of a graduation. And I went to see him. This is probably when I was 17, something like that. So we're talking about two memories when I was about 17, 18, maybe 16, and then a phone call when I was 6. So in total, I met my dad in person twice and once on the phone.
And so what was that graduation for?
He was graduating from Bible college. I don't know exactly what denomination or what college, but I remember it was important to him. I went there to congratulate him, and we took a picture in the parking lot. And yeah, it was. I could tell that he was involved in a network there at church, and it's one of those meetings where if I knew I'd only gotten 2 in my life, I would have been more inquisitive. I would have tried to make more out of it. But it was just, you take things for granted when you don't know how much time you have.
Right. So what do you know about him from when mom met him? Was he into his addiction already at that point, or do you know when that started?
I know that he had struggled with addiction throughout his life. I think that the the lifestyle that him and his friends, the time they grew up in, they ran fast and wild, and they were experimenting with everything the 70s had to offer. So I think that he was kind of wild and crazy, which I certainly had a bit of that phase, maybe different growing up, but his was exacerbated by his father killing himself. So what I'm told, and I've asked questions about his father. His father was also into drugs. I think that he was a sales guy, and he got on pharmaceutical drugs and then regular drugs because they were a lot more liberally prescribed and used and tolerated in the 50s. And he just kind of went off the deep end. So my father got more into drugs after his dad killed himself. His dad killed himself, and he walked through the police tape and saw that. And you can imagine how that would affect a 17-year-old boy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I think it was all bets are off. He was just a bit more than just mildly self-destructive. Sad.
Michael, can you take me back to the day where you found out that your dad had passed? And how did you find out? Yeah.
I remember I was at a educational program for a marketing company that I was in. And it was really not the appropriate setting. Well, there's really not an appropriate setting, I guess, but it added to the shock, I guess. It was I felt like, again, I think when we spoke last time, I talked about like running out of time, that feeling of running out of time. And I was like, ran out of time. No more time now. It wasn't like immediate sadness. It was more like, I think I have a reaction to things like when DJ got hit by a car. I just go into like handle it mode.
Mm-hmm.
So I like shifted into what I have to do and when I have to be back and what am I responsible for, and maybe that's a way of not dealing with it.
What did you have to do?
I had to go to a funeral and meet a bunch of people that I didn't know. I had to reach out to his family was going to reach out to me so I could go and collect final items. I went to Grand Ruth's house and I went through his things, like his room.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really quiet, eerie 10 minutes or 15 minutes of my life because I didn't know this man, but I was asked to come in and kind of take whatever you wanted, take whatever you felt that you should have. So I had to set up that, and I had to
Is
find
there
out
any,
when I was going to go to the morgue because I'm the last of kin. So one of the first things I had to do, I think when they were actually talking to me while I was in this educational program, I think it was either mom or my mom was telling me, and they said you'd have to come and identify the body. Like legally, you have to come show up at the morgue. And I was like, okay, this will be the third time I've seen him. Um, so yeah, that's the sort of stuff I was taking care of, I guess, is where to go, who to meet, what I'm responsible for. Um,
and so when you went to his house, did you take any items? Were there any items that you felt that you wanted to keep?
I kept some paperwork. There's some journals and things that I took of his. I took his Bible. I took uh, a pool cue. There's a pool cue that I have of his. He liked to play pool. So I would say that the two items I have are the Bible and the pool cue. But there's also like I mentioned you before that I probably have a sister. I do. I think I do have a sister out there. I mean, beyond you.
How
Um,
dare you?
I know. Um, I got a birthday card to her. There was like some cards. There's cards and there's journal writings and just like kind of junk paper is best I can put it. Like,
So you've like growing up, you've always been a good writer. Was
mhm.
he like a writer too? Because you got journals from him. Does it seem like he
Yeah,
was
he
into
looked like
writing
he had
like
been
you?
journaling. I knew he was. I
Yeah.
could tell he was in a lot of pain. There was some pain in his life because he'd go back and forth with. I've read through his journals and he had a lot of struggles. He struggled with things.
And so so did you end up going to the morgue?
Yeah, yeah. I'll never forget kissing him on his forehead. It was cold. Granny, I think Granny was there. I don't think she hadn't passed yet. It was Granny was there and my mom. And I walked into the room and it was weird. He pulled up the sheet. It was cold and I didn't know what to do and said, they said say goodbye or whatever you want to do, and I just gave him a kiss on his forehead, and it was cold. I thought I thought it's just a shame. It's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I think sometimes that too, like when we were younger, it seems like they were old, but now that we're a little bit older, it's like they were so young, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah. So
Oh,
that was weird. That was very
yeah.
weird. Um, and again, going back to the moment that I found out, I uh, I just thought I felt helpless. I felt like there's nothing I could do. I'll just fall in line and do whatever I'm supposed to do. So I wasn't really ready for that call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure no one ever is, but I thought I'd have more time. I really did. I was like not even worried about it. I think I was 21 or something. So this is the company I was in is Trek Alliance. If you remember back how long ago that was
Long time ago.
I might have been in like Chicago or some city and someone's talking in front of the room and I got to run out and take this call. It's just weird. It was
Yeah.
weird.
And those are like all like positivity sessions.
Yeah, yeah, I came back in and all my sponsors, everything were like, "What's going on? What's wrong?" And then normally they have like something chipper to say to you, and I'm like, "My dad just died." And they're like, "Oh, do you have to go?"
So
Yes,
did
I eventually will.
so did you leave right away?
That I don't remember. I don't remember. It might have been. I honestly don't. It might have been like, "There's nothing you can do. You know, if there
Right.
was one more day left or something, just go tomorrow, and then you got to fly back Monday," or something like that. It might have been something like that, but I
So
don't
tell
remember specifically.
so tell me a little bit about the funeral. What was that like?
The funeral was odd. I met a lot of people that I still remember, and I think like I should probably learn more about them and reach out to them and go find them in Brooklyn Park or wherever they are. Um, but it was weird in that I I got to sit in the front because I was last of kin. Like I got in like this featured position, right front and center, but I didn't really know him. I didn't know really anyone around him except for my mom, and I barely knew anyone in the room. I think mom came by. I think there's a few of my people that came, but they just kind of like came in the back very briefly. They weren't there for the whole, like the most of the funeral was people I didn't know.
Mhm.
So it
Makes
was
sense.
odd. It was
Right.
another awkward moment.
And so did mom know most of the people?
I believe so. I think she knew most of them. But she's a little standoffish too. She didn't have a great relationship with her son.
Mhm.
Um, so there was a lot of his I guess his father's side of the family,
Mhm.
or a lot of the people that he grew up with that I had no contact with, and there was one that was in his church group. There was a guy that's his church group that told me some stories about him and said reach out anytime. He was a kind of a leader in the church, and he wanted me to reach out to him. And I think I saved that person's information. But again, it was just a condolences from a lot of people that I didn't really know that well, and it was I want to say it was sad, but it's the same feeling of when I found out at that educational program uh, thing is just I wasn't ready. I was immature. It was I wasn't I wasn't ready for that scenario. Like I wasn't ready to process that. So I just kind of was there for the ride. It's just
Mhm.
paying attention to things, but thinking, what a bizarre scenario. Is there a person here that I should really go get to know, or
Yeah, it's a
sad?
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was it like after you left?
Um, After I left, there was a lot of cleanup to be done because there was because I was last of kin, there was a something that was left to me, and don't get it twisted. I think it's a little bit like your scenario. There was something that was left for me, but it wasn't really like a good thing. It was something that I had to sell. It was a condo
Take
in,
care of.
in Baltimore. It was something I had to take care of. There was a lot of debts that I had, not a lot, but there was some debts that I had to let them know that I wasn't responsible for. There was an old van I had to get rid of. There's two old cars I had to get rid of, and one condo that had been, I don't think it had been set on fire yet, but it was trashed. It was not worth anything. I think that after it was all said and done, I got, a couple hundred or a couple $1,000. Um, and that's after finding an investor to come in and help me fix it all up and try to resell it. So in that regard, I was lucky that I found someone to at least, help me get rid of it or help me
Mhm.
do something with that place. But you had asked before about if there's anything that I got from from Rocky. And I thought it was interesting because in the trunk of one of the vans that I got or was willed, I had to deal with, I ended up like just selling it for $50 or something like that. But it was an old van and there was some keepsakes in the back of it. And I've always been in sales, and I was always told that his father was a, really great insurance agent, and he was a really good salesperson before he had troubles, later in his life. But there wasn't like I used to sign up in these MLM companies and they'd give you a kit, like that you buy like a kit for $100 or $200 or whatever. And I found one of those kits for Excel. It was a phone company. So apparently my father was in Excel a long, long time ago. So I thought that was kind of cute.
Mhm. And then what was it like when mom and Jack divorced?
I went through a lot of personal growth sort of stuff in my 20s, and I I would always say like I had a normal upbringing, because for me I always felt bad for other some of my other siblings that might have been at more tender ages when some of these major things happened, whereas I was accustomed to having a stepdad around 6 to 8. And then around 18, 19, something like that, the family started to fall apart again. So those crucial years of high school and everything. And I always used to say that, like, myself and Autumn were the least affected. Um, and I think that's maybe a defense mechanism for me. Mom's said before, like, you didn't have a father. Of course you were screwed up. Like, but I felt so bad for you. I saw how awkward and strange it was for you and for Chelsea and for Matthew. And that's where my heart would go, because to me, I felt like an adult. I was not I think I was probably out of the house in like my first apartment or something like that. You know how you get your first apartment at 20 years old and you're being an idiot and you're kind of still at home some.
Mhm.
That's the point when that marriage started to fall apart. So I'm just trying to shield all the little kids from all this weird shit that's happening. And for me, I was like, well, I got an upbringing out of it. Now they can divorce and do whatever they need to do. Just don't involve the kids. But that didn't happen either.
Mhm. So we have like 3 sets in the family. So it's you and then DJ and myself and then Matthew, Chelsea, and Autumn. How did that feel, not having that other sibling that kind of knew exactly what you were going through? Or did it have an effect? Did it not have an effect?
Well, like I may have suppressed a lot of it. I contemplate a lot more of these things in my 30s and 40s than earlier in life. So I felt I didn't know that I didn't know that I was alone. So I just dealt it. I just dealt with it as it came to me, and um, it was hard, but I didn't know anything but that.
Mhm.
So I felt like you were. I don't know what it's like to have a blood sibling. So to me, you and DJ and Matthew and Chelsea and Autumn are my siblings. You're as close as I can feel like a sibling would be.
But I think that does have a lot to do with, because I feel the same way, and so does DJ. And I don't know about Matthew, Chelsea, and Autumn, but I haven't asked them. But because we were all kind of raised that way anyways. So there was
Right.
never this kind of uh difference between that. So when you met Jess, and that's your wife, and you guys were contemplating having a family, was that something you always wanted to have?
That's a good question. It's actually something I've never shared with. Well, I haven't shared with a lot of people. I think I've shared with Jess, but you know how I can be dramatic sometimes. I have been dramatic in the past. Okay, I like the spice of life. For a lot of my 20s, I was on record saying I'm not having kids. I'm the end of the trilogy. I'm not going to have a kid, because I thought, and it's kind of sad. I mean, it's a little dramatic, but it's kind of sad. I was like, well, you know, I don't need to. There's of course a lot of programming from mass media about how there's too many people, and You don't need kids. They complicate your life. And I just didn't want some of the things that I saw happen to us. I didn't want to have to contribute to that. So I thought, there's been 3 Michael Callahans. That's good. Most things are good in threes. Let's just do the trilogy. I'll be the last one. End on a high note. But I didn't still feel that way. I met Jess, and I really wanted it showed me that I wanted to have a child. I wanted to take that challenge, because it's, to me, being a father, it was scarier than going to get a job or getting through school, or like, that's a massive responsibility. And because I didn't have a role model, I thought, well, I probably just won't. but but um I don't know, you meet the right person, and it's the most important thing you can do. When I met Jess, my opinion changed. I guess when you meet the right person, you're ready to take on that challenge of what I was intimidated about for a very long time, which was, being a father. And I didn't want to try and play that game, because I didn't know what being a good father looked like, and I knew what's at stake. If you mess that one up, you can create a real problem for society. so, um, but it's the most important thing you can do. Like, when I met Jess, I thought, well, I that's more exciting to me than getting the right job or getting the right education. If you can really pour your heart into that and be good at that, then that's everything. And now that I have little Michael, he is everything. I mean, it's wild. It's, come full circle. For a while, I was not going to have kids, because I thought, it's hard enough in this world to try and raise a family, and you know other people can be good fathers. I don't know what that looks like. So because we didn't get into Jack, and he was a fine stepdad, but I just saw him like disconnect with all of the children when they became teenagers. And now he doesn't have a relationship with any of us that he raised. And I was like, that's an interesting choice as a father or stepfather. I don't have anything against him. My point in saying that was just that I don't really have a 100% good father figure that I can look to and go, I'll just do what he did.
Right. So it makes it a lot more difficult.
Right. You can see why I just kind of wanted to avoid the whole thing together for the most of my 20s.
So what type of values do you want to instill in little Michael?
I think he's really smart, and I think he's kind, and I think he's funny, and just to leave the world a better place than you found it. To do your best. You're gonna fall down, but get back up. And I thought, I am the right type of person that could be I could be a role model. I have a lot to give back. I have a lot to share. So, you know, I have you and DJ to look at as parental figures, and I think that I think we're gonna do great. I think we'll do fine. He's a good boy.
So what was it like?
It's not hard to improve upon where we came from. So maybe you could look at it like that.
Right.
We're already starting the race at the 50-yard line.
So what was it like when you found out that Jess was pregnant? What was that feeling?
Night and day from when I was younger. I was super excited. I never had any I've had relationships in the past where the woman that I was with really wanted kids, and it didn't make me want kids anymore at all. But when Jess was pregnant, I was super excited. We went to some stupid place like to eat like Champs. It's called BJ's. It's like a restaurant, a kind of a sports bar sort of thing. When we found out the gender, and the doctor gave us this little book of, you turn the pages and it's got like a nice little message about whether you're having a boy or a girl. And there's video when she found out she was pregnant. There's a video of me jumping up and down, but there's not a video of this. And we were at this restaurant and she was like opening it. And she gets to the point where she said, "We're having a boy." And I just screamed. I was like, "Yes." I'm yelling at everyone like, "Yes, you hear that? You hear that?" So I was excited.
Yeah.
From the very beginning.
And then what was it like when he was here? You were able to hold him and you were like, he's here. I am a father.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a huge fan of hospitals. So my first memories were being the protective dad. Like I was on him when he came out, and I was just like looking at everyone like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the number one thing that I can say is that something kind of kicks in. It must be nature or something like that kicks in. Like, this is the most important thing. Like, it's not like I'm busy. It's like, you're doing this. You can exclude everything else and figure out a way to make it work, because this is the most important thing now, and you're just going to deal with it. That's it. And it's I guess a tremendous sense of duty, like, came from, deep within me. Like, this is the most important thing. You will give this your utmost attention.
Mhm.
That's it.
So what would your advice be to someone that is going through a similar situation that you did growing up? There wasn't this one father figure, like you said, like
Right.
it's kind of, there's somebody here and then that doesn't work. And there's somebody else. There's kind of this a little bit of instability when it
Mhm.
comes to that. Like mom was always this, stable rock and was wonderful. And what I always say is there's only so much that one person can do, because one person's trying to do two jobs and that's an impossible task for someone to have. So what would your advice be to someone that's kind of feeling a little bit, maybe even a little lost, that they're kind of in this unstable place?
I get it. Yeah, I'd say this is America. I mean, this is we all come from broken families. I mean, but that I do think it's important to aim for the ideal. I don't think it's productive for people to say, I mean, of course I respect single mothers and I respect different sorts of families, but a child needs a mother and a father. That's the ideal situation. So if you find the right person, you can overcome where you came from, but you should aim for the ideal. But we can all overcome. You overcame. Look at you. Look at DJ. We've all done great. Um, but don't kid yourself. There's an ideal that you should strive for, and if you find the right person, you should try to keep that marriage.
Yes.
Try. Do your best.
Do your best. Do your
That's all you
best.
can do.
All right. So is there anything else that you would want to talk about that you
Anything else
think,
I would want to talk about?
yeah, that you think that might be important?
I do think it's important. You never know when you won't get to speak to someone again. So I think that for those out there that might have strained relationships with either their mother, father, or grandmother, grandfather, with a close relative, um, do it. Just go. You don't know. You don't get to know when someone will be taken away from you. And sometimes you only get. I don't think about it too much because it keeps me up, but you don't get. You only get one side of the story. You know, and that is a shame. It's a shame. So if you don't get to decide what the future holds, so go take that step and talk to that person or ask that person a question that you might not get the answer to from that person again. So if it's painful, if it's awkward, if it's uncomfortable, good. Go do it anyway. And reach out to that person, because you never know what the future holds.
Mhm. All right, Michael. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
You're welcome.
chatting.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I
Make me
learned
look
so
good.
much. I really do. Cross my fingers, hope that you and Jess have some more.
Yes, Mom keeps saying,
That's
let's get
completely
it
up to
going more and
you.
more.
But I have to say, the sibling it's tough, but it's really cute.
No,
So.
we want more. We want more. All right. Well, thank you for having me, sis. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode in our Vanishing Fathers series, please make sure to rate and review this podcast. The reviews really do count. If you'd like to hear more about the statistics and further understand the impact on fathers in society, please purchase our book, Vanishing Fathers, A Ripple Effect on Tomorrow's Generation. All proceeds from the book will directly go to charities that are helping at-risk youths. And if you'd like to follow us online, go to our website, trumancharities.com, Facebook @TrumanCharities, Instagram, Jamie_Truman Charities, and you can follow me on LinkedIn @Jamie Truman. Thank you so much for listening to our Vanishing Fathers series, and please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes.